Practice Community.
So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Leigh. I've been with the MLPC since June of 2020 during the pandemic, and I quit drinking alcohol in March of 2020. Found Alex through 1 Year No Beer. Early on in the pandemic with the MLPC, we read a book called Embracing Yoga's Roots, which is this book by Susanna Barkataki. We read this together, and it led to my inquiry into how colonialism has had an impact on yoga. And I went on to take the Embracing the Roots of Yoga course with Susanna Barkataki. And through this work, I learned that yoga is not really meant to be an exercise program for thin white women, but it's been super bendy women, but it's meant to be all inclusive for all people, regardless of your body size, your gender identity, physical ability. And the goal of accessible yoga, or yoga for everyone, is to find an inclusive and equitable practice that's safe and effective and still respectful of the roots of yoga. So I spent 2022, the past year, doing the 300-hour YTT with Alex, the focus on mental health. And as I was thinking about my final project, which this is my final project, it seemed to fit with my passions and my purpose to help people find a way to make yoga more accessible and more inclusive. So I don't know if we'll have time to get through a ton of these poses, but I'll do my best to include some of the ones that you asked for. And I will also share these two books, which I used a great deal in my preparation: Accessible Yoga by Jivana Heyman. If you follow Jivana on Instagram, he has amazing little videos that he puts side by side with really flexible, bendy yoga practitioners, and he'll do them against the wall or in different positions and shows you how to make them more accessible. And this book is awesome. As well, Diane Bondi is a great person to follow on social media, and her book, Yoga for Everyone, has amazing pictures in it of, like, I just pulled up wheel pose, and these are some suggestions for wheel pose. And she has these really incredible pictures. This is like the standard way to do wheel. And then the, some adaptations or variation suggestions. So her pictures are amazing in that book. So I recommend those if you want to go further. This is the schedule that I wanted to follow today. Introductions we already did. We'll do some centering in with a reflection question. I have some slides to share, and we'll do some practice, and we'll see if we have time for questions at the end. So we'll start with just a little centering in. So find a comfortable seat. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze and turn inward. Start to connect to your breath. And just reflect on the question: have you ever felt like you didn't belong in a yoga space? Walked into a yoga space and felt uncomfortable in any way, maybe due to a disability, body size, gender identity? And just think about how that made you feel in your body, if you had any contraction in the belly, the jaw, shoulders, or hips. Acknowledging those feelings, observing them. Let them move through you and release them with your breath. Maybe finding a way to use this experience to empathize with others. And then gently blink your eyes open if they were closed. You can look around the room, orient to your space, roll your head, your shoulders, maybe drink some water. So yoga in the West can often feel like an exclusionary club for the wealthy, the thin, flexible, and able-bodied. And in yoga, in embracing yoga's roots, Susanna Barkataki says yoga is for everyone. You don't need to look a certain way. You don't need to own anything in particular. You don't need to be a certain type of person to do yoga. Yoga is the real reason for yoga are to find that deep inner peace and inner harmony, and not getting a perfect body or having the best looking yoga poses. So some principles that we can follow are not comparing or competing aloud, and this includes with one another as well as with yourself. What the person is doing next to you doesn't matter. That's one of the beauties of practicing at home, I think, and on Zoom, is that you have your own space, and I find practicing at home, I really am more into my own body and not noticing what other people are doing around me. Maud says bird of paradise. Okay. And as well, sometimes your body is different from one day to another. So not comparing what you could do last week to what you can do this week, as I have arthritis issues, and some days I can do poses and some days I cannot. So just being gentle with yourself about that. As well, we all have different skill levels, abilities, and challenges that we have to approach with non-judgment. And finding compassion, nurturing the self, and deep inquiry as part of your yoga practice is really important. Yoga encourages us to feel what it's like to be here, be alive, and to breathe. And this is the experience of the moment, to be present. The original purpose of asana was to prepare the body for meditation, as well as to stretch the body after meditation. So meditation was the center of the yoga, and asana was just a way to prepare or to stretch afterwards. So the end goal of yoga is not the postures, but to calm the fluctuations of the mind. And asana is a tool to help us achieve that. And I think as yoga has become more westernized, we think of it more as all being about the postures. And then allowing for the uniqueness of individual bodies. Not all bodies move the same way. Poses can look different on different bodies. And we need to make space for this and allow for the individualization of each pose to accommodate different abilities. And calming the fluctuations of the mind is one of the Yoga Sutras. Alex is doing a whole study on Yoga Sutras coming up. And we studied the Yoga Sutras in the 300-hour YTT. And Yoga Sutra 1.2 is Yoga Citta Vritti Nirodha, which is calming the fluctuations of the mind. So we're looking to find that inner peace, to relax the body and the breath. And with that, we start to connect with our mind. And in fact, some of the most powerful tools of yoga are more subtle and accessible to our bodies, and do not require great physical strength and ability. So we'll talk about some ways to adapt asana practice to make them more accessible. People often ask what about the integrity of the pose? If we're changing the pose, don't you lose something if you adapt the practice? And they have this idea that modifying a classic pose will somehow leave you with something less than yoga. And Jivana Heyman beautifully says, people are more important than poses. And it's better to adapt a pose to a person than a person to a pose. And I love that idea. So we'll be working to find one way of adapting a pose is to embody the essence of the pose. Figuring out ways to feel that the pose in your body and think about what is the main essence of the pose. So the full expression of the pose or the advanced expression variation is not any better than any other variation. There's no hierarchy in yoga. Peace of mind is the goal of yoga. The physical ability does not correlate to peace of mind. Asana allows the mind to get quiet, but your ability to quiet the mind is not the result of how advanced the pose is, but how focused you are. And then finding the relationship between the physical practice and the subtle practices. So how does your physical practice impact your relaxation, your breath, combining breath with movement? And how does that impact your ability to steady your mind? And instead of looking at a pose and thinking, I can never do that, consider what can you do? And then we'll consider what the benefits of the pose are. So we'll try using Cobra as an example. The energetic component, this is like upward facing dog or Cobra, and the little figure in the screen is doing a Cobra. The energetic components are expanding the chest, strengthening the upper back to improve your posture, moving the spine in the opposite direction of slouching. It's a heart opener, expanding the chest. So think about in your mind, if you close your eyes or just take a soft gaze, just think about, imagine yourself doing Cobra pose in your mind. And then move toward that shape right where you are in a sitting position, maybe squeezing your shoulders together, creating a gentle arch in your upper back, your neck, and notice those sensations. Notice your breath. Notice as you expand your chest, can you feel your breath expand? And then relax and notice how you feel. The moment after you do a practice is important. So noticing how just that little squeezing the shoulders together maybe had an impact on you. And then there are the props. You can use a yoga mat. You can double your yoga mat. Blocks or books help to bring the floor closer to us. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes and weights. I love my blocks. A bolster I'm sitting on right now. It's just a denser kind of a pillow. You can use a couch cushion. You can, it's like, but a bolster is a little denser than a pillow, a little more supportive. And it's good to sit on to bring your hips up above your knees. Blankets are awesome as well. They are really flexible, can be folded or laid flat. You can use them under your knees for extra padding. I like one with a little weight in it. The Mexican blankets are awesome for that, just to provide a little weight. And in Shavasana, I always like to put a blanket over my hips. Straps are also awesome for extending your reach. And the wall or a chair as well if you have limited mobility or flexibility. So you can use your props to bring the floor closer to you, to create alignment, to practice more safely. There is no really perfect alignment in any given pose, but the prop can help you practice safely and keep you from overstretching or straining your muscles. And then props can help to make connections for the flow of energy. For example, like if instead of reaching your hands behind your back and interlacing your fingers, if you hold a strap behind your back, you can still feel the pull between your hands behind your back with the strap, but And it creates that energy flow, but you don't have to actually be holding your hands together. It can also be good for like using a block under your forehead in like child's pose or something where you want to make connection with your forehead to the floor to create that energy flow. And they also allow for a release of effort. If you put a block under your back or your sacrum in bridge pose, you can hold it for a longer period of time and move in and out. I'll be talking about moving in and out of effort. So as you're like in a position and you want to use that muscular activation and then relax, and muscular activate and then relax, you can then get deeper into the stretch that way. And it can props can also apply pressure to massage your internal organs. Another way is breaking down the pose that we talked about, thinking about the essence of the pose, practicing one part of that at a time. And also another way is changing the orientation of the pose is another way to adapt, like putting child's pose on your back or doing pigeon on your back or in a seated position. And then another way to make it more accessible is to make it more dynamic, to move in and out of the pose. For example, in bridge pose, if it's hard to hold a bridge, but if you lift and lower your hips, that can make it more accessible as well. And then imagining the practice in your mind, visualizing it, and being creative of how to adapt it for yourself. So we'll start our practice in an easy seat. So I am going to put move back so we can come back here. So I'm going to sit on my bolster. You can be on the floor. You can sit on a block. I also have my chair here. If you're sitting in a chair, you can have your feet resting on the floor. You can be sitting on fold up a blanket or a towel under your hips. I always find it more comfortable if I'm seated on the floor to have something under my hips. I need to I'm going to come closer because I need to get my AirPods on. They were charging. So we're going to just start with a little centering in again. Find a comfortable seat, as comfortable as humanly possible. Elongate through the spine. Soften your gaze or close your eyes. Relax your body, bringing your awareness to your breath, coming in through the nose on the inhale, feeling the air slightly cool, moving in through your nostrils, down your throat, expanding your lungs. And on the exhale, notice the air leaving your lungs, slightly warmer now, flowing through your nostrils. And spend a few moments here observing the sensations of your breathing. Maybe you would like to bring one hand to your heart, one hand to your belly, so you can feel which muscles are moving, what you're feeling in your body. Noticing that rhythmic expansion of your chest and your belly and relaxation that comes with each cycle of breath. And if your mind wanders, just gently bring it back again. Take one more breath. Release your hands. Gently open your eyes, noticing how you feel. We'll begin the practice with one chant of Om. Bring your hands to your heart. An Anjali Mudra. We'll take a breath in. Big exhale through your mouth. One more breath in to chant the sound of Om. Om. Gently release. And then I'm going to switch this to the next slide. So we're going to move into child's pose. So child's pose, you can have your knees together or wide on the mat. I like to have the mat, the blanket folded. I have it kind of in quarters, nice and flat, so it's under my knees. Toes are together. You can place a bolster in front of you. Another way to do this is to put a block under your bolster for an incline, resting your forehead down. You can also just lean forward, bringing your forehead to the block or to the floor. Finding a way that's the most comfortable for you. Another option is to kneel in front of your chair and place your arms and your forehead on the chair. This is a gentle inversion. Your heart is slightly lower than your hip. Your head is slightly lower than your heart. It's a forward fold, a safe position, protects your internal organs. And there's a gentle quieting experience happening here, turning inward. So that's one thing that you want to tap into as you're practicing child's pose. Another option, if this is uncomfortable for your knees, is to place a blanket behind your knees. You can also flip onto your back for this pose and pull your knees up to your chest. Feel free to unmute yourself and tap in if you have any questions. And just breathe here, noticing. And then in your child's pose, start to walk your hands over to the right side, getting a side stretch through the left side of your body, maybe placing the left hand on top of the right. It's a little spinal side bend. Breathing into that left side of your body. Let it go. And then gently walk your hands over to the left side of your mat. Maybe stacking the right hand on top of the left. Getting the side stretch to the right side of your body. So I think you can do that in any of these positions. I think if I was doing that on the chair, I would just turn my hips instead of my hands from one side to the other. And then come back to center. Slowly lift yourself up and come to your hands and knees. And we'll work through some cat-cow. So this is, you can be on your all fours. You can have your elbows on a bolster here, like this, and move through your cat-cow. For the cat-cow, we're looking for a rounding of the spine, tucking of the chin, lifting the back to the sky, and then rounding, lifting the chin, stretching the hips to the sky and your head, moving back and forth. And another element that we're looking for in cat cow is connecting your breath to your movement. So as you're moving forward and backward, you're exhaling as you're lifting your spine to the sky, inhaling to open your heart. You can explore the length of your breath, moving fast or slow as your breath is. You can also do cat cow if it's uncomfortable on your hands and knees in seated position. Just working through like that with your hands on your knees and kneeling. If you're in the chair and working this, would look something like this. And then we'll move on to plank. So from your hands and knees, you're gonna, in plank, if you can lift your knees, pressing through your hands. You can also have your knees down. So you want a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. So your hips are lowered, not up in that all fours position. You can also come down to your elbows for your plank if that's more comfortable. You can also do plank on your chair, just on the seat of your chair, and that incline may make it easier for you. And also it could be done against the wall. In plank, we're looking for core engagement, knitting in the ribs, connecting to the breath. I have a teacher who talks about the ribs as the shutters, and you want to close your shutters. So that bottom rib cage, you want to pull in, knitting it into your belly. So if you're working on plank, like at the wall, and you want to have more core engagement, you can put a block between your legs to kind of pull together your legs. That's an option. Working on strength and stability here, connecting to the breath. So play around with that. Any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. And from there, we'll work on cobra or up dog. So this was Robin's. Something that Robin wanted to work on. So lower down to your belly. You can put a blanket under your hips. You can also have a block under your head for this. Bringing your hands under your shoulders. And then just squeeze your shoulders together. Bite on your hands. This is a baby cobra. And connect to your breath there. If it feels comfortable, you can start lifting and lowering. Another way to do that, coming in and out of the pose, is to bring your hands out to the outside of the mat, up on your fingertips with your shoulders lifted. Inhaling to come up, exhaling to lower. You can also try placing the bolster or a pillow or a block under your belly for this to help kind of give you a little support in coming up into your pose. Cobra can also be done kneeling, just extending through your spine this way. If you're on the chair, you come down to your chaturanga and then lift up this way, or it can be done at the wall. You could come up onto your toes and lean back, or just lean back gently. Finding your edge without straining your body, your back. Trying to look. So you can hold in that position and take 3 breaths, or you can come in and out of it. Noticing how the pose changes your breath, the energetic quality of the breath. And then gently lower down.
Leigh, can I ask a
And
question
yeah, sure.
about Cobra? I was
Yeah.
just thinking when I was in that, should the weight be like in the heel of your hand, or should it be more towards where
The
should you
front
distribute your weight?
for a full cobra. Like,
Yes.
so I have it more towards my fingertips. You want to kind of claw in with your fingertips and also press the weight towards the thumb side of your hand. And if you want to come up to the full upward dog, your toes are out, you're pressing into your toe mounds, clawing into your fingertips, pulling towards the thumb and the index finger. Does that answer?
Yeah. I think I'm
Do you
finding the
have,
weight when I do it, the weight's like in the bottom of my hand. I think I need to work on that.
yeah, so I wonder if also, I don't know how it would be to do that from on a block. If that might help with your wrists. And then, I don't know. I think, but what I've learned is pressing into that radial side of your hand, which is the thumb and index finger.
Thank you.
Okay, so tucking your toes, pressing your hips up and back, coming into your down dog. There are a lot of dynamics in down dog. You've got a forward bend, inversion, heart over the head. You have a weightlessness on the with the head and the neck. You can shake your head yes and no. There's not really a balance component here. We're stretching the backs of the legs, strengthening the arms and shoulders, really pushing away from the ground with the arms and shoulders and connecting to the breath. So there are a lot of people that feel uncomfortable in down dog in the traditional way. You can do this, just put your knees down and come into more of a puppy pose for this. Another option is to have your hands on blocks, and that raises you up just a little bit. I like them on a flat position. So I have the full hand on, or I bring the heel of my hand slightly off of the block and press back that way. That's an option. You can also do this on the chair.
Leigh, this is
Yes.
Marty. Should our heels be on the floor or not?
They don't have to be, no. I mean, I can get my heels to the floor when my hands are up higher, but when my hands are down on the floor, my heels don't reach. But you're working to stretch toward getting your heels to the floor, maybe doing one heel at a time, walking through your pedaling out your feet. You might reach it further, but that's not a requirement.
But is that
That's
the
a
goal?
myth. If it's
Okay.
not the goal.
Okay.
You're looking for getting a stretch through the back of your legs though, and through your Achilles tendon in the ankle. So depending how tight your ankles are, your hips are, some people are more flexible than others. Another way to do this is on the back with your hands on the chair, or you can have your hands on the wall and get the same kind of extension through the shoulders. So if you do these poses in different positions, it's surprising how you can feel the same feeling without the doing the pose in the traditional way. If you're seated in a chair, it would look more like this. So you're getting that spinal extension, but you're upright. Any other questions for down dog?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
Where should you look? Down or straight or?
I've been taught to look towards your legs, like towards your knees, in the traditional with your hands on the floor variation. You would be looking. You don't want your head like way up towards your belly. You can look up towards your hands and see where they are, but you really want your head more between your arms, looking towards your legs. Any other questions for down dog? Beautiful. Okay. So from down dog, walk your feet forward. We'll come into a forward fold. This is, I think, Brenda said this is hard for her. So for forward fold is tricky. So let's do a halfway lift, bringing your hands to your legs, coming to a flat back, inhaling, and then exhaling, lowering down. So you can have your blocks at a tall position to place them on. You can have a deep bend in your knees. I kind of like to have a deep bend in my knees and wrap my legs behind, my arms behind my knees. That feels really comfortable for me, resting my belly on my thighs. Placing the hands on the blocks, you can place your hands on a chair. This is another inversion where your head is hanging upside down. It helps to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which stimulation for parasympathetic kind of doesn't seem to meet, but that's the rest and digest mode. So it's a calming mode. It helps to connect inward. Another safe position where the front of the body is protected. This can also be done if you're seated in the chair and just leaning over your legs like this. It can also be done in a seated shape with your strap. And I kind of wanted to talk about this. So if you want to take a seat, find your strap and wrap it around your feet. And have your knees bent. And that way, for me, it enables the hips to be aligned. So your shoulders are up over your hips and then you're going to hinge forward from the hips rather than rounding the back into the forward fold. And that's a safer way to enter into a forward fold, is to come into it first from a hinge and then round into it. And as you're working through that, you can kind of work towards straightening your legs. You can have your hips also. Another adaptation for forward folding in a seated position is to have your hips elevated. Any questions about forward folding? Okay, so now we're going to move into a lunge. So come up to a standing position. You're going to have your blocks on either side of you, maybe at a lower height, maybe higher. I don't, depends how you. And then we'll just take the left leg back. So our feet are not on railroad tracks. They're separated. So they're on two separate railroad tracks. And then for a lunge, if you have your hands on the blocks, you can kind of move in and out of the lunge. It takes some of the strain out of the back to be a little more elevated this way. If it feels comfortable, you can lower the blocks to a lower height. Reaching down to the floor just doesn't give us much room for your body. And then I want you to see how it feels to kind of play with your leg, energizing your legs. So pull your feet toward each other and then release, and see how that allows you to kind of sink a little bit deeper into the pose, to activate and then release. You can also have your knee down on a blanket. So that's one way to practice that. And you can kind of step forward, coming back up to standing, and then move to the other side. Another option that I wanted to show for this, and we'll be stepping back this time, the right leg will step back. So I'm going to do this in the chair just to show you how this would work. So I'm kind of at the edge of my chair, and I have my thigh on the chair, reaching back with my right leg, left leg. So if you're in the standard position, I can again still get that activation of my legs in this position and release. But I don't have to work quite as hard, but I still get that same kind of feeling. And then just switching, I'll switch to the other side, but so for this pose, we're looking to get stretch to the deep muscles of the pelvis, hips, and lower back, as well as flexibility and strength, reclaiming strength and power, energizing. Any questions here with the lunge? And then step forward and we'll work warrior two. So similarly to the lunge, we have our blocks. We'll just step back with the left foot. This time we're placing the left foot parallel to the back of the mat. The front foot is vertical. So your front toes are pointing to the top of the mat. And then we're going to keep the left leg straight, bending into the right leg. And the arms come out. So this is the standard position, head turning to the side. So one of my teachers teaches pulling back with your left arm and then sinking a little deeper in through the right, like pulling back, sinking down. So another variation, a variation for this could be lowering the back knee, kind of coming into that gate pose. I have my left toes kind of pointing sideways off the side of the mat. And I'm still getting that same kind of stretch through my inner groin here. Arms are still activated, gazing out over the side. So that's an option for warrior two. We could try that on the other side, coming to the center. And I'll show you this one on the chair as well. So kind of like the lunge, I'm going to go to have my left leg off the side. And you find that same activation, pressing through your feet, pulling your legs together, and release. How are we doing with that? Beautiful. Okay, so come back to center and we'll try a tree pose. So tree is a tricky one. It requires balance. So if you want to remove the balance element, you can just come up against the wall. I'll lean against my bookcase here so I'm more centered. So if I am leaning back on something, you can have a block by your foot and just place your foot on a block. You can place it on your leg at any height that is comfortable for you. And your hands can be at prayer or raised up over your head. You can have your toes down on the floor, kind of with your heel on your ankle, like a kickstand. Another option is to hold the wall or with one hand, or here, I'll put this over to the side so you can see. So holding the chair with one hand to find the pose. Sometimes if you take away the balance element, then you can get maybe a deep, like find yourself holding the pose for a little bit longer or finding a deeper expression of a pose. If you take away one part that's hard to allow for some ease in other ways, you're getting hip opening here, you're engaging the supporting leg, bringing your body toward the midline, and also grounding through that standing foot. And I always like to imagine a tree growing and placing deep roots into the ground so that the tree can reach up to grow. It's that root to rise kind of thing, idea. Let's switch feet, trying the other side in your tree. Another, if you're seated for tree, you can work on just getting that hip opening. You can also move your body in different positions to work on balancing in the chair. Connect to your breath. Find a steady gaze is really important if you're working on the balance. And then release down out of that. And we'll come into pigeon pose. So pigeon is, you're finding, it can be a back bend, but oftentimes people work on this as a forward bend. So pigeon has a lot of variations. I like to come into it if I'm doing it on the floor, on my belly from a downward dog. Lift your right leg and then pull it through so that it comes across the width of the mat. You can have a blanket or towel folded to sit your hip on. Under your hip, you can have a block to rest your forehead on. Some people like to bend this leg in to make it a little more accessible. The standard variation of the pose is to have your legs straight out behind you. So blanket under the hip. You can also put a blocker bolster in front of you, bending the knee. You can do this in a seated position with your leg crossed over your thigh. You can do it on your back with your leg crossed over your thigh and bring your knee up. Or in the chair, seated this way. And then if you're working to find more sensation in through the hips, you can kind of hinge forward. So play around with that. If you're ready, you can press back into down dog if you're doing the standard version and switch sides. Again, focusing on the calming quality, turning inward, and practicing this with gentleness and sensitivity. So if it feels like you're going too deep, feel free to back off a little bit. Beautiful. I'm looking over here at my TV because I have a bigger screen over here so I can see you all a little bit better. Any questions about pigeon? Feel free to unmute yourself. Another thing about pigeon is when you're in the standard, in any part of the pose, if you again engage those muscles, pulling your front knee back, back knee forward, kind of pulling upward, and then sink down, you can maybe find a deeper release in the hips that way. And then come back. I think we've done both sides, right? Coming back to, I think I wanted to try crow pose. Maud had asked about crow. So come to a kind of a standing position. Let me see what. I wanted to see what Diane Bondi had recommended for crow. Okay, so some variations for crow is to try it on your back. I'll just show this picture here. So pulling your knees into your thighs on your back, and then also trying it with your feet up against the wall is another option. So when I try crow, okay, so we're standing, inhale, reaching up, exhale, folding forward. So coming to a forward fold and then bend through your knees in your forward fold. I like to put a pillow or a block in front of me, and you can also put a block behind you. And then lift up on your toes so you're getting your knees up high on your upper arms, and just lean into your hands that way. So maybe I want the block a little higher so I can lean my head on the block, maybe bringing my feet up onto the block. And maybe that is an option for you. And then release, coming in and out, practicing coming in and out. I can't see you, Maud, so I don't really know what you're doing, how it's going for you. But on your back, if you wanted to try this, if it's not your jam to do it from a squatted position and have that weight bearing on your wrists, you can pull your knees up to your chest and press your knees into your elbows. So you're getting that core activation still, strengthening, energizing quality. Okay. And then the other one that people have been asking for is headstand. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question for crow.
Yeah.
So do you look down or do you look like forward? I don't know.
So I
For
think
crow.
just place your gaze right slightly in front of your fingertips,
Okay.
slightly forward, kind of centered is how where I place it. Where do you place your gaze? Yes, sir.
Yeah, same. But I've seen some photos that they're looking up, like up or
More
forward.
upward. Yeah, I don't think there's any real right way to do it, right or wrong. It's like what your personal preference is. So,
yeah, I keep looking. Yeah, same.
Same. That's where it's the most comfortable for my neck.
Yeah.
Is to kind of look just slightly forward. Okay, so headstand. I'm looking to see what she recommends for this FG. I know she has it in here. I always like to kind of tease into headstand when I'm working on it. You can do it supported up against the wall for sure. I think the safer way to get into headstand is using your core muscles. Versus kicking into it. I know Kelly has an awesome contraption that takes the weight off of your head and place it. Here she is. She's showing it up there. If you guys want to look, you can kind of put your head in that well shape. And then here she's going to demonstrate. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And then she presses so easily up into headstand from there. So that's a way that you can start to practice just getting comfortable with that inversion. She has pictures of somebody with blocks, stacking blocks long side up against a wall in sets of 3 or 4, leaving enough space between them to fit your head. So it's kind of like building a contraption like Kelly has, placing your hands, feet, and the tops of your feet flat on the mat. I don't have that many blocks to do that. Your hands go between the blocks. You place your back against the wall, walk your feet forward and lift your legs. Another person has it between 2 chairs, working on it, or just up against a wall. I like to have, for starting, I like to have a blanket or a softer surface for myself. Coming down to hands and knees, and then measure the space between your elbows with your hands. So you're kind of bringing your hands to your opposite elbows, and then clasping your hands together with your elbows planted at that place. So you make a little nest for your head, and then lift onto your toes, and just start to tease your way onto your head, pressing through your elbows, pressing through your head. Your arms are active here. Maybe try lifting one leg, the other leg. Maybe both of your legs come up. You can try that also with the wall behind you, so that if you do fall over, you're not falling very far. Questions about headstand? Another option for headstand is just to get that inversion. I think headstands are really beautiful practice for shifting your perspective. So bringing your legs up the wall is another inversion that people do instead of headstand. That works. And then we'll move into bridge, and I'll talk about wheel in bridge pose. So come down to your back. I always think it's a good idea to warm up your back before moving into a full wheel. Have your blocks nearby. So you're on your back, bend your knees, walk your heels up towards your buttocks. Your knees are facing up to the sky, and your elbows are next to your abdomen. You can have your palms facing up. And take a breath, let it go, and then start to press into your feet as you lift your hips up and lowering down. So this is a pose for my back. Sometimes it feels really stiff to get into this pose for me. So coming in and out of it is a good practice for me, a way to adapt it. I know Alex, I've seen her teach with your arms coming up and down as you lower, moving with your breath. Inhaling to bring your arms up over your head and lift, and exhaling to lower back down. You can also place the block under your hips
so you can sustain that lift a little bit longer. Maybe pressing in and out from the block to get a little activation and release. You can also place a block between your legs for this. Again, this is another gentle inversion, stretching the chest, the neck, the spine, strengthening the hips. It helps to lower the heart rate and blood pressure. And you really, when you're in a bridge pose, you really want to be pressing through your feet, knees tracking straight over your toes. You can press the back of your head against the floor and lower down. So for wheel, your hands are coming back up over your head. Some people like them wide, some people like them in closer. And then the other thing about wheel is playing with your foot positions. So coming up into wheel, if your feet are wide, it gives you a little bit more support. Pulling them together is a less support or less narrower base of support. Another option is putting 2 blocks up against the wall. So if you're not playing with wheel, you can just have the block under your hips and stay in that supported bridge pose, or come out and bring your knees up to your chest. So for wheel, I'm putting the blocks on either side of my head up against the wall so they don't slip out from under me. My hands are coming to the edge of the block and pressing up that way. Some people find that a little bit easier. Another option for practicing wheel is to practice it up against the wall, leaning back into the wall and pressing through your hands. That takes the push up out of it. I always feel like when I do wheel, like I have to generate a lot of energy to push up into it. It's like a miraculous thing if I get there. Any questions about wheel or bridge? Okay, so we'll start to wind it down. Laying on your back, bring your arms into cactus pose. Maybe pull your knees up to your chest and just hug them in, releasing your lower back, maybe rocking side to side that way. And then bring your hands back out into cactus and let your knees fall over to one side, the right side. For this, you can place a block between your knees. You can have a bolster or a block under your lower knee. Working, it's more important, I think, to have your shoulders on the ground than your knees on the ground. So if your knees aren't going all the way, placing a block under your knees so you can relax into it, or a rolled up blanket is helpful, or your bolster to if you need a little bit more height. This is giving you a twist in the middle back, opening the lower back and the hips, stretching the buttocks, massaging the inner organs. Connect to your breath here. I'll take 3 deep, long breaths. This is one of my favorite poses. You can also do this as a single leg with your bottom leg lengthened and out in front of you. And then come back to center, pulling your knees into your chest, maybe rock side to side. And then let your knees fall over to the other side. Deciding if you want to do the single leg or double leg twist. If you want more sensation, you could cross your legs into the twist. Connecting to your breath. Deep, long, slow, deep breaths. In and out through your nose. On your next inhale, bring your knees back to center, and we'll work into a corpse pose Shavasana. So this pose is one that I really like all the props. You can place a pillow under your knees, roll up towels under your knees, put your blocks under your knees. I love the feeling of grounding that the folded blanket over my hips gives me. You can place an eye pillow or eye mask on, lower the lights, put a towel over your eyes. You can rest your wrists on the blocks. Another variation or way to use your blanket is to really spread it out so that you're covered up and warm. And I've also seen people put it over their head so they make a little nest out of the blanket. Personally, that is not my jam, but I prefer just a little bit of covering, but choose what works for you. You can place one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Allow yourself to rest. Take a deep breath into your body. Notice, how is this body after your relaxation? What does this body feel like right now without rushing into the next thing? How is this body in this posture? Often said to be the most important posture of all of yoga. Draw your attention inward. Take a moment to notice which parts of you showed up as you practiced new variations today. And if you got to be in touch with your curiosity, any frustration, playfulness, ease. Take one more deep breath in, roll to your right side. Slowly make your way into a seated shape. Seated on something, making yourself comfortable. And I invite you to continue to be committed to getting to know yourself and what you need for your practice, and take this awareness of your self-care with you as you leave the mat and enter the yoga of life. Bring your hands to your heart center, bowing to yourself for making it here, for practicing, bowing to the others who are here practicing with you, and bowing to the wisdom practices of this ancient practice and the yogis who have taught us through many, many thousands of years, teaching from teacher to student, finding gratitude for those who have brought these practices to us. We'll chant one sound of Om together. Take a deep breath in, big breath out. Another deep breath in to make the Om. Om. Release your hands and you can open your eyes.